This is a presentation on mitigating neuromyths in secondary education. What is a neuromyth? A neuromyth is a misconception or misunderstanding about the brain based on scientific evidence. A neuromyth can be partially true or entirely untrue. It does have a false aspect. There are common misconceptions in the public which have naturally spread into education. Examples include that we only use 10% of our brain, teenagers are overly impulsive, and eating sugary snacks reduces focus and attention. A neuromyth derives from somewhere originally and over time has spread from person to person. This is why some neuromyths seem familiar. You might think, I've heard that before, or yes, that is correct, without actually consulting the evidence or origin from which it came. It is important to realize that we live in a world that is changing, and our scientific understanding is changing as well. New studies are finding new evidence and information that contradicts or changes our perspective. You only have to look into our recent history to find wrong practices such as smoking and radiation poisoning. The important thing to consider is where is the evidence, what is the legitimacy of the evidence, and what does the latest research suggest. Here are some modern examples of neuromyths. Students learn in different styles. You may have heard of the different learning styles: visual, auditory, kinesthetic, and reading-writing. This suggests that one area is preferred or suitable to individual students. However, students are capable of learning across the different learning styles. Visual learning, for example, is more entertaining and perhaps easier than reading-writing. What happens when students are told that they learn better in some styles but not others? Do they avoid reading and writing? And how long could this continue uncorrected? If a student has an option between reading about a subject and experiencing it, what would they choose? Most likely, they will choose the safer, easier option. Our responsibility as educators to young people who are not yet ready to make all of their own decisions is not to limit their potential. Labeling in the classroom may leave a lasting detrimental effect. Develop a range of learning styles in the classroom to mitigate this neuromyth, because a student's weakness can accelerate and might just become their strength. There are various neuromyths surrounding the male and female brain. A popular misconception is that the female brain can multitask more efficiently than the male brain. This neuromyth is untrue, since neither brain is capable of multitasking without some sort of hindrance. Each brain has the capacity to learn and develop with practice and neuroplasticity. Education should be equal according to gender, and remain so in order to provide male and females with diverse opportunity. Women in sport, for example, or men in home economics. These are old stereotypes which can change when we stop applying restrictions to gender and focus on the talent and ability of individual students. According to the book 5 Teaching and Learning Myths Debunked, A Guide for Teachers, written by Adam Brown and Althea Kaminsky, research reveals that multitasking negatively affects memory, and of those who grew up in the digital age, their ability to multitask was no better than those who grew up without technology. The assumption that young people are better at multitasking is debunked, and the assumption that multitasking increases productivity is also debunked in the same publication, revealing that multitasking leads to a significant number of neural errors. The book also claims, through neuroscience research, cognitive psychology, and educational psychology that multitasking is actually attention switching, which is our brain rapidly switching from one task to another, made to feel like multitasking. Even though the process seems automatic, each time your brain switches, it must stop the current task, search for information about the new task, find new task parameters, and engage in the new task. There are certainly a lot of contradictions and new evidence surrounding multitasking, meaning that we should be very wary of the information and where it comes from. A general rule for teachers is not to categorize students without sufficient evidence. Students can be misdiagnosed for conditions such as dyslexia, autism, and ADHD. Statistics show that teachers are only slightly more aware of neuroscience facts than the general public. If we get information wrong, this can lead us down the wrong path, which multiplies wrong practice and affects other people. From parents raising their children to education and teaching and the workplace, we are required to stay up to date with the latest research and dispel information that is not backed by scientific evidence. As a society, we are still learning and discovering in the field of neuroscience. There are many lessons to be learned, which means old ideas will be replaced. We are a society of different spiritual and religious beliefs. Education institutions need to be reliable, helpful, and as accurate as can be in response to false information.